Good evening and welcome to our Evening Rounds podcast. My name is Dr. Anthony Hilliard, and I'm one of more than 1,000 physicians here at our faculty medical group at Loma University Health. Tonight, I'm really excited to have Courtney Martin as our guest. She's a physician here at the faculty medical group. She's an OBGYN. She's also a mother, a wife, an athlete, and juggles many things. I want to know what makes her tick. What makes her great? How all of these things and all of these activities in her life impact how she practices medicine. If you like what you hear and you want to check out prior episodes of our podcast, please go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or our Evening Rounds webpage and click the link to subscribe. This evening, I'm really thrilled to have Kelsey Culler as my co-host to try to understand and learn more about Dr. Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Hilliard. I'm so excited to have you here tonight, Dr. Martin.
Thank you.
Honestly, you are such a huge part of my department. We pull you into so many different opportunities for media interviews or for, patient stories because you have such a tremendous energy and passion for patients and for our community and being able to educate. This CV goes on for 6 pages. It is so long, but you are the medical director of the Total Birth Care Center here at Loma University Children's Hospital. You're the medical director of quality. You're the general OBGYN division chief. I could probably read through this and all of these awards that you've won for hours.
Kelsey, we get this. Dr. Martin's a superstar, and we know that.
Yes.
You're so kind.
But I want to hear from Dr. Martin.
Yep.
So, Dr. Martin, I'm going to call you Courtney.
Yeah, of course.
Because that's what I would call you when we're working together.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're going to get to a lot of great things about you and what makes you tick. But the most important question I have for you is, what was the last conversation you had with one of your kids this morning?
Unfortunately, they were all sleeping. So I just gave them kisses. I had to come in early. But if we go to last night, I was talking to my middle son, Blake, who is just so incredibly unique and special because he beats to his own drum and he loves beating to his own drum. And that is right up my alley. So yeah. I definitely embraced that. And I just told him how amazing he is and how special he is to me. And I was talking to him about, he started Spanish immersion school. And he's so funny because he'll come up and be like, I don't speak any Spanish. I don't know anything. And then I talked to his teacher and she's like, he's doing incredible. I'm like, this little kid, he just wants to play it cool even at 7, So yeah. I just was telling him how proud I am of him and being in a new school with all this COVID stuff and just transitioning. He just doesn't get knocked off his path, which is pretty cool.
That's gotta be so hard. You were in this morning, you're on call now.
Mm-hmm.
You were in so early, you didn't even get to say goodbye to them.
Mm-mm.
I know that's the struggle, right? As a mom,
yeah,
it's a demanding job. It's a nonstop job. As a physician, it's a demanding job. It's a nonstop job. I know that I struggle that in my own life with, missing the field trips or missing the big events. How do you balance that? Because you're here you're on these long shifts and you're nonstop.
I have a lot of help.
Nice.
And I think I sort of have this internal motto that I'll sleep when I'm dead. So it's probably true that I don't sleep enough and things like that. But when I'm home, I genuinely feel like I'm 150% home. We're doing crafts, I'm taking them places. And when I'm here at the hospital, I'm doing everything I can. And, the doctor mom or the working mom life is really just being comfortable with feeling like you're never going to be good enough in either place.
Exactly.
But I'm going to try.
Really?
Right? So I think when I'm home, I think I should be studying. There's so much new literature. I have to read. I have to do all this stuff. And when you're here at the hospital, you're like, oh my gosh, I should be home. My house is a mess. I never make dinner. And, those are the areas that I, always feel like I'm not good enough. But I know that it's a balance and you just have to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And know that this is such a fleeting time. They're growing up so fast and I'm going to just be present when I'm present. I can control that.
Wow. So just always kind of managing that guilt, managing how that is. When you're here, you're here. When you're there, you're there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's a hard balance for any mom to have, especially in a world that just seems like it's going 1,000 miles an hour. And like you said, they grow up so fast. So taking those moments to really encourage Blake when he's not as confident in himself is really special.
Well, I think every mom does this. Yeah. And a lot of dads do it. But I think for sure the mom, working mother, and even a stay-at-home mother, the mom guilt descends from the heavens the moment you're pregnant or the moment that baby's put in your arms. It's like every decision seems so important, right? What color blanket? Oh my God, it's a blue blanket. Now he's not gonna it's just like everything it's intrusive almost as a mother. And so, even the small things like what color socks, to what brand of diapers, to what kind of food you feed your child. I mean, like every single thing feels like I'm doing it wrong.
Yeah.
But that's not true. Like a lot of that stuff doesn't really make a difference. And I think one blessing I have is I tend to, I picked a specialty that I basically surf the gray all day. There's not a whole lot of black and white in OBGYN. It's very much like clinical experience, and there's some guidelines and things like that, but you're always deciding like, do I do a C-section? Is everything okay? Do I get the baby out? Do I wait? Like you live in this gray area. And I feel like that's what being a mom is. And you have to be okay with like, there's no hard and fast rules. You have to do what feels right to you, what feels right to your kids. Every child you parent differently. And the sooner I think patients and people recognize that we really have very little control over things in our lives, then we just live a happier life. It's this lack of control that like makes people feel very, I think, overwhelmed and anxious, or you can't do it. So I just think maybe I have some deficit or something where I'm like, well, we'll figure it out. Like you just kind of get to a place where I just always am like, okay, well, there's a water leak at my house now. Okay, well, we'll call a plumber. It'll be fine. There's you just get to this place where you're just like, things just don't upset me.
Yeah.
You just roll with it.
How do you think that translates to what you tell your patients? Because I know you really care about women and their mental health. You're not just an OBGYN. You are there for their mental health too.
Yeah. Well, I think, I live the same life as a lot of them. They're maybe not doctors, but again, the working mom thing. And I just really understand and empathize with that. But the mental health thing is really a lot of times some of the stressors and pressures that we face as women and moms and working moms. And I think our generation's different than prior generations, right? So a lot of things come from framework and coping skills. So I grew up under this impression that like if I was a good girl and I made good choices and I followed the rules, that nothing bad was ever going to happen to me. And that's a lie.
Yeah.
That's a lie. And that's, I think, what a lot of our generation grew up with, whereas like the generations before seemed to kind of grow up with this idea that like the world's a terrible place, and if you get through it unscathed, you're lucky, and so then like when bad things happened, I felt like they were like, well, I kind of expected that. And really what I see in my practice and with a lot of my friends and the generation we're taking care of now, including the millennial generation, is like this idea that, again, if I'm a good person and I make good choices, nothing bad's going to happen. And they're intensely disappointed, intensely upset when things don't go well or something bad happens to them. And it's the lack of coping skills in this current generation. And even I had lack of coping skills myself when I had some things not go right. And I feel very fortunate because as a response to that, I was able to develop some of that. And I believe it definitely colors how I counsel and how I listen and how I try to be there for people. Because again, it is really about the disappointment and how we manage that and how we bounce out of that changes things.
So I'm feeling tired listening to you.
Yeah.
As a male physician, all of those things that you described about what made you nervous or concerned about, the color of the blanket, the matching socks, the diapers, never crossed my mind.
Right.
And I'm sitting here reflecting on that, and I'm sure my wife Tammy could say a lot more about that. But I'm continuously impressed about how women juggle so many different things, because we look to you for so much guidance in our own lives, and then in your own practice with the kids, things like that. So, clearly you're like the Energizer Bunny. You just go and go and go. But how do you not fall flat on your back like the Energizer Bunny does at the end of the commercial?
Right.
And so where do you find that space to re-energize yourself? Because it certainly sounds like to me you're a giver. You give and you give and you give and
Thank
you give.
you. Yeah.
But at some point, Courtney's got to say, "Hold on, I'm going to take."
Yeah.
Tell me about that. What do you do to stay sane?
Yeah. Well, I am so lucky because I married my college sweetheart.
Oh.
But we're best friends. But actually what's really great is he's very good at grounding me, sometimes too good, right? Like
We need that though, right?
yeah. And we really like are friends. So I think that helps because he's like just it's like this kind of sarcastic and fun relationship. And then, I do probably need to sleep more and do all of those things. But I think I'm just the type of person that just does gain energy and recharging from feeling like I'm making a difference. And I think also this is like the 38-year-old version, right? But like 19 or 8-year-old Courtney had a lot, I think, of some of these qualities that were just too magnanimous. And, I got taken advantage of a lot because of this like desire to help people. And also just didn't understand kind of the world and where my place would be. And I think so now, having gone through a lot of different life experiences and almost not even going to medicine, I'm just so grateful every day that I get to do it. And it does seem like there's, I believe I'm a Christian and I have, a strong faith. And I think that, you look back on like why certain things happened. And now it's like so clear that all of this was sort of just preparing me to be who I'm meant to be. Like even crappy experiences, I don't think God intends us to have like bad things happen to us, but you can take those. And then now I look back and I think, gosh, I'm like such a better doctor because of these things, or I'm such a better person because I've been through this. And I think, it's interesting to be an OBGYN. What I love about it is I feel like I'm talking to my girlfriend when they come in for the visit, or my, friend or aunt or something. And I can just like talk about what it's like to also be a mom, because I get it. I live the same thing, so I just get so much joy, and I get recharged actually by being that person for those women. And then I'm recharged at home because I love kids. I just love them. And I just think they're so funny. And so I don't know, I guess it's just the type of person I am. And I think, again, it's really just the gratitude, because I almost didn't do this.
You said two very interesting things that I want to come back to. I can't leave them alone. And I'm guessing the people listening to the podcast are going to say, Hilliard, why didn't you ask that question? Or Kelsey, why didn't you ask that question? So you said your 19-year-old self, 18-year-old, 19-year-old self, and you said your 38-year-old self. I'm guessing you're 38. I'm not entirely. I'm putting the math together here.
For another month, I'm 38.
So,
nice.
So you said my 19-year-old self and my 38-year-old self are very different. So I would like to know a little bit about your 19-year-old self.
Yeah.
Because there may be 19-year-olds out there facing things that you may be facing.
Sure.
And then the follow-up to that, if you forget, is what would you have done had you not gone into medicine? Because you said I almost didn't do medicine.
Yeah. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So my 18 or teenage version of myself is, it's, I mentioned earlier, this feeling of never feeling good enough. And I think now it's kind of colloquialized as like imposter syndrome, but like I've had that my whole life. Like, I don't know why we have young women feeling like they're not good enough at anything. Well, part of me feels like that's great because it drives me to want to be better, because I'm competitive as all get out. Like, there is no question. I like to be the best.
That's true. I do know that about you, Courtney.
You can tell that from this resume.
Yeah, I like to do a good job.
Yeah.
And it's not even just about me being the best, but I like to win. I just like to win.
Yeah.
Ask my husband.
And if you win, Loma Linda's winning. That's how I look at it.
Exactly. No. But I can't even enjoy a bowling. Like, I can't even enjoy bowling. Because I get so angry. I mean, it's just who I am. I can't handle it. And so, and we're going to talk about sports, but I feel like a lot of athletes, like if you spend all your life trying to be good at a sport, you get really good at basketball. I can play volleyball, basketball, like sports that I practice a lot. It just feels like all those hours of practice should transcend to any sport you play. Not true with golf.
Or tennis.
Not true with bowling.
No.
Tennis, I'm okay.
Oh,
I
wow.
can actually play that. But
I'm
for
impressed.
some reason, those two sports anyway, we're going on a tangent. But I think this imposter syndrome, and I still struggle with it, but I'm getting into this place where I'm like, what am I apologizing for all the time? Like, I do have some experience. Maybe I'm like not coming up with something that seems so off the wall. Like I had felt for so long with whatever I was doing, basketball, this, that, the other, that I just like wasn't good enough or no one would take me serious. And so that certainly does drive a lot of like hard work and things like that. But now I'm at a place where I just work hard because I actually love what I do. And I'm so grateful that my passion aligned with my career. That doesn't happen for everybody. And so that's really special. But when I look back on my youth, or even, coming up through med school, like, okay, Legally Blonde's one of my favorite movies. I'm just going to admit that.
Is it
Mine
really?
too.
I figured that was for
and
you.
number 2.
Yeah, they're so good. But
Wow.
I felt like my first day of med school, no joke, I showed up without a computer.
Oh.
Because computers, when I took 4 years off, so we didn't really use computers. And I mean, one professor at my college had a PowerPoint, and we were like, this is amazing. PowerPoint for lecture.
Totally.
And so then when I went to med school, I was like, I'm just going to go up with my old school style of studying. I had gotten in. I was a pharmaceutical rep before I went to medical school. So I had perfectly done nails, a spray tan. I was much thinner. I don't want to bring that up, but it's true.
You were Elle Woods.
Arguably like a little Elle Woodsy.
Okay.
Yeah, and a cute outfit. And then I even had a fluffy pen. I'm not exaggerating.
Wow.
And then they said on the first day, they're like, open your laptops. We're going to do a test. And I was like, laptop? What? And so I failed the first test. I couldn't do the quiz, the on-the-spot quiz.
Because you had no laptop.
No, I didn't have a laptop. So I learned, and then I just laugh now looking back, because I think that is just sort of how I am still. Like, I am very much willing to show up maybe without some of the things that other people are maybe not arguably as prepared as everyone, but I can like wing a lot of things too. So like
You make it work.
I can make it work. But so then all through med school, I was feeling like maybe I just had to prove to myself and everyone else that I wasn't a joke, that I could do this. And even all through school, I had to work so hard to get a B+, A-. Like, I'm talking study more than anyone else. I would try so freaking hard. And I would
not. Well, it shows. Look at all that.
But I wouldn't get a 4.0. I didn't have a 4.0. I didn't have any of that. I really had to study so hard for the MCAT. For my step 1 test, I spent 6 weeks in the library, like 18 hours a day. My husband can attest to this because we were married at the time. And I got the score I had dreamed of. And I just felt like that was a testament, like I could do it, whereas other people hardly studied and they got like a 260. I mean, the scores.
It validates you, right?
It validated. And I was like, wow, this is how I'm going to get it done.
Yeah.
I mean, I may not be as smart as everybody else on books or things like that, but I have other things I can bring to the table, and no one's going to outwork me. And I learned that actually from sports. So that's where that comes from. Yeah.
But you still didn't answer my other question. I asked 2 questions.
Okay, sorry.
That was, I love that story actually, because McPherson Lab, the back corner was Hilliard's spot. I just left my stuff there to study because I felt like I had to study more than others as well.
Yeah.
The other question, though, I mean, you alluded to it a little bit, that you took 4 years between college and medical school, and you were actually a drug rep. Would that have been what you had done, would have done for your entire career, or what would your life profession be if you were a physician?
Think probably I would have stayed in that and escalated up the chain there, or done something. I think I am a little unique to medicine in the sense that I do have more of a gregarious personality and a salesperson personality, and I got a lot of that training. I think it fit well with who I was, but I wanted to be a doctor since I was 5. The reason I got derailed is, unfortunately, I was the victim of an assault in college, and I had developed PTSD after. And so part of PTSD is sort of losing sight of hopes and dreams. And I just, when I was talking earlier about that framework and mental health, my world kind of came crashing down when I had that happen to me, because again, I had grown up thinking, if I make good choices and I do the right thing and I'm a good person, nothing bad will happen to me. And that wasn't true. And so once I had floundered a little bit, but it was actually an OBGYN and a well woman visit who saved my life, essentially, not because I was suicidal, or anything like that, but because I was so disillusioned and so suffering so much from PTSD that she basically reached her hand down in the hole and helped me out and got me into counseling and was like, you're not okay. This is not okay. And once I got into counseling and did some treatment, I was like, I want to go to medical school.
Wow.
And so, it's ironic. I did become a OBGYN, but certainly that colored a lot of where I was, because I just thought that person made such a difference in my life. And it wasn't in a labor and delivery room.
Yeah.
It was just in a physician visit. And I thought how much power that person had to just take that extra minute and reach her hand down and save me. Like she saved me, because I think I would have regretted it my whole life, not going into medical school. Yeah. And so it's funny how things work. Like, again, my MCAT was expiring. Everything was and I got into medical school at the last minute that year that it was expiring. And then the rest, is history. I'm here. And it's just, so I think that contributes to why I come every day and I'm like, I'm just going to kill it, because I just almost didn't get to do this. And I feel like I have an onus to all the patients who come in, interact with me, or my residents I'm teaching and medical students, to show them how much you can impact patients. I just feel like I have to give it back.
Yeah. And I see you do that with our patients. And it's incredible that you're able to make that connection with them and pay that forward and really give them so much more than just, it's so much more than pap smears and babies. It's
totally. And I think also
health.
I try to be vulnerable. It's really hard sometimes, to be vulnerable as a physician, because we need to look like, we're the person who has all the education and we're like the smart one and all this. And I kind of want to be like, I'm not really that smart. It's kind of amazing that I'm here.
No one believes that.
I've learned how to overstudy and cope, an experience, but really I just want to tell them, I'm kind of just like you and I get it. And I struggled with this, or I've been through things like this. And I think vulnerability is what is the world needs. And in a world of social media that everyone's perfect, I think if everyone was just a little more vulnerable and honest with themselves and everyone else, we would all be happier.
Yeah, I think as moms, as humans, I completely agree with you. And I love how you're balancing right now your vulnerability, but then also what sounds like a very healthy dose of competitiveness.
Oh, totally.
And I love kind of hearing how that journey went for you, because it seems like a lot of those earlier years really shaped who you are now as a physician. And I know a big part of that, which I found out today, we were rivals, was sports.
Oh, 100%.
Actually, and you being a basketball player.
Yes. And I will tell you that being an athlete completely shaped who I am.
I completely agree.
And it is, I think, one of the best things you can do for your children is to get them in sports or some sort of something. But the reason sports are so important to me is I actually think that the mental toughness that I developed by being an athlete is the only thing that spurred me through residency and to be a doctor. Absolutely.
Wow.
There are times, I don't think people realize what you go through as an athlete, but I do have to tell you, the very beginning, again, this is how divine things are. When I was in the 7th grade, I was 6 foot tall. So let's just throw that out there now.
Club right
you
here.
know, Kelsey, how that is. You don't want to be.
Well, I know too.
Okay, but it's cool if you're a boy.
Yeah, it is.
When you're 12,
it's very
in
different.
the 7th grade or something, and you're 5
Touche.
to 10,
Okay, fair point.
It's a little bit, and
it's a tough time.
As an aside, this was before the ceramic flat iron, so I also had really curly hair. So it wasn't exactly.
It's not easy.
Good easy times. So I tried out for the cheerleading team, which I was super excited about because that's my personality. I was like, I'm gonna be a cheerleader. It's gonna be so great. And I didn't make it. Yeah. And it was so devastating. I remember that it was back in the day before we had voicemail, right? So you would call an answer machine, and you'd have to record it at your house, and then you would hit the buttons to play it. You remember this, Kelsey doesn't.
I do. I do.
Dr. Hilliard, Anthony, you remember?
Well, I'm older than you.
Yeah, so you must remember this.
Yes. Grandpa remembers.
Okay, good.
Grandpa.
So I remember making my mom replay it a bunch of times because I was like, they must have missed my name. Play it again. We listened to it I just think that was so devastating. But the funny thing was after that, the basketball coach was like, you're really tall.
Come on over here.
Maybe you could play basketball. And my dad was super into it because he was a very good basketball player and athlete. So anyway, I started playing basketball and just from that moment, that competitive nature, but also just work ethic, right?
Yeah.
I felt at that point, well, no one's going to tell me what I can and can't do. That's literally who I was since birth. My mother will tell you. So when everyone was kind of like, well, she probably won't be a good basketball player, picking up too late, that kind of stuff.
Wow.
So I was like, well, no one's going to be better than me. So I did about 200 layups a night. My dad used to have to be like, it's dark, you need to come in.
Wow.
I mean, I just practiced so much. And, you know, you can't teach height. I mean, we say that to people. So it does help if people have some genetics in their court. But I definitely put the work in, and then ended up, you know, being a multi-sport athlete in high school. And I think learning how to juggle all that is important.
Yeah.
But
so much discipline.
Yeah. And then in college, basketball was pretty intense. You know, it was a NAIA Division I, but my coach, I mean, he was such an influence on my life because of all that. And I started playing for him when I was 15, actually. I played club basketball, and we won the AAU national championship when I was 15.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
In Florida. So it was pretty great. And a lot of the women that are in the WNBA now, they're all kind of old and retired because we're 38 now. But back like 10 years ago, a lot of the people I played with and against were in the WNBA. And it was like, oh yeah, I used to guard her, you know, like, but I just knew that was not, you know, I was kind of a short post player. I was 6 foot. So
I played college ball too, but since I'm grandpa, I think it was when the Converse were there. And there was no
You guys didn't
no 3-point line.
no 3-point line.
No shot clock.
I don't think you're that old, but it's fun sure to make fun of that.
But that resonates a lot with me.
Yeah.
You know, I think sports does a lot of things, regardless of the profession you ultimately go into.
Yeah.
And that's why I actually like the NCAA commercial, right?
Totally.
These are going to be professionals in something
That
other
is one
than
of
the
my
sport.
favorite commercials too.
Because it instills a work ethic.
Yeah.
It instills you being able to work under pressure.
Absolutely.
And in our, you know, in our
you
field,
and I for sure. Yeah.
you know, you can't freeze up.
No.
You know, you can't be that deer in the headlights. And
So true.
To put yourself in those environments as a kid, I think really shape you. Obviously, if you succeed, but also when you fail.
Yes.
You know, how do you get back up if the case that you didn't go very well?
Yeah.
You had a complication, things like that.
I pull from the moments when I would miss a block out and not get a rebound and hear the buzzer go and sub you out.
Totally.
Did you have that happen to you? Yeah, I'm sure you did.
No, I never got subbed out.
Yeah. Oh, okay. You were
Never.
that good.
Never.
Yeah, right. Sure.
No, but
I'm just kidding. Like, but you know, like
no, totally agree.
that sort of failure. You're right. I mean, the mental toughness piece is probably, I think, one of the biggest. Learning how to dig your heels in, and that saying, like, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. I mean, when I was a resident, I mean, OBGYN residency, I think, is pretty known for being a tough residency program. I mean, it's a surgical subspecialty, and you are there constantly. But 5:30 a.m. films at 20 years old, then full day of classes, then practice, and then conditioning. I mean, like, it was 7 days a week.
Yep.
7 days a week. And I look back and I think, like, what got me through that? Number one, that my dad's my biggest fan, no matter what. I mean, literally, I could have the worst game. I could have something horrible about me, be like, you're the best basketball player I ever saw. Wow. And to this day, he will still be like that. So having that parent, and my mom is amazing too, but my dad is like over the top.
Yeah.
I mean, I can do nothing wrong, even still. He's amazing. And that actually, when I was a resident and bad things were happening, like you were saying, or you're like, can't freeze up, I just knew that my dad loved me no matter what. And I was like, he was my biggest fan. And so I just, like, you really have to find confidence in those kind of things. And so, like, I felt like that was one of the best things, but certainly pulling through, not freezing up, and then the ability to detach a little bit. Yeah. So one thing that you learn as an athlete is to watch film.
Yep.
And that, like, you always have opportunity improvement. So I actually love doing a lot of surgery. And I do a lot of GYN surgery and for endometriosis and pelvic pain and complex surgery. And although some of us, you know, some people don't treat gynecologists like surgeons, we really are. And our patients think we are. So it's kind of important.
Do you use a scalpel?
I do.
And do you take things out?
Yes.
And then you close things back up?
Yes.
I'm an interventional cardiologist, so I'm not a surgeon, but that sure sounds like a surgeon to me.
I always tease, you know, our teams here at Loma Linda, I love because we are surrounded by some of the best surgeons and everyone has such great camaraderie and we're so supported by them. I'm so grateful for that. But yeah, I think, like, when people are like, oh, how did you, like, in residency, you know, work on your surgery skills? I was like, I used to sew a sock. I sewed a sock with a laparoscopic trainer every night, multiple times a night. When I would go home and put my kids to bed, I was sewing, I was practicing.
Really?
And I think I got that from being a basketball player. I'm sure you could echo the same thing, right? Like, or from being an athlete. Yeah. When you're trying to get better at something, it's muscle memory. And it's doing it. And I think a lot of people think that you could just, like, unless you're the one holding the scalpel or unless you're the one throwing the stitch, that you're not learning. I sat in so many operating rooms just watching and learning from watching, right? Like watching film.
Yeah. So you traded all those 200 layups every night for a sock every night.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then now, even still, I watch a lot of Surgery U. We have AAGL, which is the American Association of Gynecologic Laparoscopy, and they have all these things. You watch Surgery U and you learn. I will go into my partner's OR still. And when I became an attending, I filmed every surgery and I would rewatch them to try and figure out how I could have better economy of motion.
Wow.
But all of that comes from the ideas. I wouldn't have probably thought that on my own, but the ideas came from being an athlete and like doing film when you're playing basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you've summarized why kids should participate in some sort of competitive activity, which is difficult these days, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to circle back to something you said earlier, that you know, as a male, I wanted to touch on a little bit. So, you know, we hear from in the medical community about postpartum depression. You've written articles about postpartum depression. You know, historically we'd say, well, it's a woman who's just sleep deprived. You know, they got too many things going on, and and so maybe they're a little more emotional, things like this. I think it would be really important if you could comment a little bit about, one, postpartum depression, is it real? Two, does it get better for those people who are struggling with that right now, and what to do about it?
Yeah, great question. It's debilitating and it's pervasive, postpartum depression. It is real. We know that women will have some emotional lability for the first 2 weeks after. I mean, you can't, I always joke that I want to do an experiment where I put some estrogen patches on some men and then rip them off all of a sudden and see how they do for a few weeks after, and keep them up all night with a baby.
I love that.
And then see how they tolerate that. But it's true that you'll have some difficulty. Emotional lability is totally normal. Hot flashes, some of that kind of stuff, because again, your estrogen level is very high when you're pregnant, and then it drops off after you deliver. And so it's like a sudden 180. But after 2 weeks, if you are still having a really hard time. So when we say having a hard time, what does that look like? Pervasive thoughts about inadequacy, pervasive anxiety, pervasive inability to sleep, and all the nerdy terms we use, like psychomotor agitation and retardation. Those are real things. Apathy. But I will tell you that what I think is the most common thing I see is it's the mom guilt. So if we're circling back, like it's that mom guilt combined.
I was going to say, doesn't everyone feel that?
Yeah, but it can be combined with life experiences, socioeconomic difficulties, and disappointment. And disappointment looks like different for everybody. So one of the main things I see is women who are very motivated and committed to breastfeed, and it doesn't go well.
Yeah.
It is like an immediate sent into,
it's like failure.
Yeah. That's just one example. And also what people miss sometimes too is actually I see a fair amount of postpartum anxiety that is actually a manifestation of the depression and anxiety disorder. So it should be I think it should be called like postpartum depression anxiety, because, a little bit of anxiety is normal, right? Your brain is going into natural mode to be able to not sleep as deep, so you can hear a baby and be able to go, is my baby alive? Right? Like, okay, it's alive. I'm going to wake up to it crying.
So true.
Right? So there's all these things that happen to our brain in the immediate postpartum period, but it can be too much, right? Yeah. Is my baby alive? Is my baby alive? Is my baby alive? I can't sleep. Something bad's going to happen. Oh, like all these things. And then if you combine that with a birth experience that was very different than what they thought they were going to have.
Totally.
And there's disappointment.
Yeah.
It's the lack of control in all these experiences that then combined with maybe a history of anxiety and depression sends people over the edge. Breastfeeding's not going well, sends them over the edge. So you have some hormonal changes that also result in serotonin and things like that changing. And I think if you don't get ahead of it, they really suffer. And what I also see is that a lot of women refuse to take medications because they're like, I don't want to go on medication. There's stigma to the medication. Yeah. They want to I can do this on my own. And it just, not everybody, but in a lot of cases, it seems like it just drags out so much longer than it would have to.
Yeah.
And so that mental stigma is a huge battle.
We just want to carry it because we just feel like it's another task in our day. Wow.
Right. But they're paralyzed and debilitated. And every patient that I've taken care of, after I finally convinced them, or they've waited out long enough and they're not getting better and they go on meds, they're like, I should have done that so much sooner.
Wow.
Because you miss that little bit of time with the infant because they're so sick from all of this. So I actually have a conversation with a lot of women, and I try and talk to them ahead of time and just say, like, listen, when they're struggling even before, like about when they're going to deliver and they want to have all these plans of how things are going to work, and that it's literally just them trying to grasp at any straw they can that gives them this much feeling of control of the outcome.
Absolutely.
And I just try and tell them, like, this is just the beginning of your life. What you'll realize, you have zero control and you have zero control of children.
Yeah. Preach. That's so
You have zero
true.
control of children. So this is God, whatever you believe, trying to prepare you of what it's like to have zero control the rest of your life. Welcome to the fun.
Yeah.
But it's that disappointment that really sends people, or altered expectations. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, what a fantastic public service announcement for anybody who's expecting. I think it's really important for people to hear that it's not just the stress and lack of sleep that's causing this, and that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and they should seek help for postpartum depression.
Absolutely.
So
and don't wait that whole 6 weeks. Like, we don't forget about you because you delivered.
Yeah. And I think the most important thing you said is that it's prevalent. You know, this is
so many
people. This is not just one experience, one woman. This is so many women that experience this.
I think it's a commentary on society and the pressures we put on women, and the pressures that women put on themselves.
For sure.
To be everything to everyone and to be perfect, and everything's got to go just this way.
Yep.
Because that's what it looks like on Instagram. And the reality is like 98% of people aren't what Instagram shows.
So important for women to hear, I think.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's
Well, Courtney, we could chat with you for hours. You've shared so much of yourself. I appreciate that.
Of course.
You've been vulnerable. It teaches me to be more vulnerable. You know, one of the things when we were thinking about this podcast was the title of the podcast. What should it be called? You know, what's a good representation for what we're trying to get across? And we came out with the Evening Rounds podcast title. And part of that was Evening Rounds to me has meant so many different things through the years. Obviously, it means watching sunsets in the hospital and not being at home. It means having some really difficult conversations with patients or their families when they get off from work and they're coming into the hospital.
Yeah.
It also reflects times when I was able to get home and think about things that may enhance my personhood, whether that be exercise or spending time with family and so forth. So Evening Rounds to me has a lot of different meanings and probably is somewhat dependent upon what I'm doing for that month or year and so forth. So my final question to you this evening is, when you hear the term Evening Rounds, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I love the idea of the separation. It means two things. The first is evening rounds in the hospital is exactly what you described. It's a time where things aren't moving so quickly, and I have an opportunity to kind of circle back with patients and actually circle back with residents and our students. I love teaching residents so much. I think that they are the future, and I feel like, you know, I can only see so many patients, right? I can only see so many, but I feel like if I can impart any wisdom, impart my journey, impart some of the things I've learned to residents and to students, it helps to inspire them to keep going maybe, or to provide great care to people. And usually in the evening is when we have a little time for teaching at our sign outs. So I think of that as well. The second thing that I think is that evening rounds means to me is I start my second job, which is I get in the car and I drink a caffeinated beverage and I do some positive self-talk, and I walk in and I become mom. And I laugh sometimes because, you know, like I go from doing a crash C-section at one moment, right, and saving a baby and a mom, and it's like amazing, and you feel happy that everything worked out. And then like literally 90 minutes later, I'm scrubbing a toilet. Right? Like, oh, it's dirty. I got to clean the toilet tonight. It's just like, what just happened? Like, it's just such a weird dichotomy. So I think for me, evening rounds is like, that's when I start my second shift, and it's the best job, right? I love both jobs. And I get home and we're doing dinner and we're getting the kids to practice and we're, you know, cleaning up and doing homework and doing all of that. So I think evening rounds means both those things to me, kind of.
Fantastic answer. Well, thanks for tuning in this evening. I'd like to thank Dr. Courtney Martin once again for joining our Evening Rounds podcast.
No, thank you so much for having me. I am exceedingly honored and grateful. You guys are awesome. And I think it's so special what you're doing for our group. We're so grateful to have you lead us. And I just will say that I am honored to work with all 1,000 of these physicians. I think sometimes, the more outgoing of us kind of get in front of the camera, but in general, I feel like I'm always trying to represent what all of our LLU FMG doctors are. I mean, everyone that works here is so incredible and so committed to the mission. So thank you for having me, and for all of you who are listening.
Thank you.
I have the easiest job in the world, candidly, because of that. Our clinicians are fantastic. But we're really thrilled that you were here.
Thank you.
And we can't wait for our next Evening Round podcast, and we'll look forward to seeing each of you at that time. Have a great evening.